The movie The United States vs. Billie Holiday tells the story of how the popular jazz singer, Billie Holiday, was targeted by the United States government in the early years of the war on drugs. The movie script draws upon a section of a book by British journalist Johann Hari entitled Chasing the Scream. Hari's book is a history of the United States war on drugs implemented by the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, who began by targeting black jazz musicians and then zeroed in on Billie Holiday as the focus of their anti-drug crusade. But it was more than just about drugs. The author Johann Hari said this in a 2016 interview on the Social Exchange podcast about Harry Anslinger, the new commissioner of the 1930s Federal Bureau of Narcotics. To Harry Anslinger, Billie Holiday was a symbol of everything that was going wrong in the world. She was an African American, she was an African American woman, and she was an African American woman singing a song against lynching and resisting white supremacy. And she was a heroin addict. Anslinger claimed that narcotics made black people forget their place in the fabric of American society, and that jazz musicians were dangerously creating satanic music under the influence of marijuana. The movie highlights the fact that the attacks on Billie Holiday, in the guise of a war on drugs, was a cover for the repeated failed attempts to stop Billie from performing one of her signature songs, Strange Fruit, a haunting lament for the black Americans lynched in the South. The song was written by a Jewish school teacher from the Bronx, who was a member of the Communist Party, and was viewed as subversive by the US government. Hence the persecution of Billie Holiday for singing the song in venues all over the country. But there was more to all of this as well. It is a fact that Billie Holiday was a heavy drug user. She was raped twice as a child, brought up in a brothel, worked as a prostitute by the age of 13, and arrested at age 16. She knew racism her whole life, as demonstrated when her father died of pneumonia after being denied adequate health care because of the color of his skin. And she endured blatant racism as the first black woman to ever tour with an all-white band. Billie Holiday also had to suffer at the hands of the abusive men who were lovers and husbands. So it is no wonder that Billie Holiday used drugs as a means to soothe the emotional pains of her life. The Encyclopedia Britannica tells us that by the mid-1940s, Billie Holiday was spending $500 a week on drugs. That is over $9,000 in today's money. And that she was a frequent drinker and user of marijuana, opium, cocaine, and especially heroin. Harry Anslinger's deep-seated racism and his hatred for what he considered to be the perversions of the jazz music coming out of the black community meant that he had to target one individual among the community that would get the most notice. And in this dogged effort, Anslinger decided to zero in on Billie Holiday. He assigned a black agent named Jimmy Fletcher to track her drug use and arrest her under any terms necessary. According to the movie, Billie and Jimmy eventually became lovers. But is this true? It is a fact that Jimmy Fletcher was a real person, and he was assigned to track Billie's every move. Harry said in his book that Harry Anslinger hated to hire black agents, but if he sent white guys into Harlem, they stood out, so Agent Jimmy Fletcher was his only choice. In the 2020 documentary entitled Billie, Jimmy Fletcher said in an interview that it was good publicity for the Bureau to go after a big star like Billie Holiday. But Jimmy Fletcher never said anything about being in love with Billie. It was Harry, in his book, that said he had a strong intuition that they were lovers. The film also touches on Billie's rumored sexual relationship with actress Tallulah Bankhead. It is true that because of her prostitution in her early years and her drug use, Billie served time in prison, and she openly spoke of a number of lesbian relationships that she had while incarcerated. But there has never been any evidence to actually prove that she had a sexual relationship with the actress. On July 17, 1959, Billie Holiday died at 3:10 a.m. of pulmonary edema and heart failure caused by cirrhosis of the liver. She was 44 years old. Initially, Billie had been taken to Metropolitan Hospital in New York for treatment of liver disease and heart disease. According to Harry, as she lay dying, her hospital room was raided, and she was placed under police guard. In the hospital, Billie went into heroin withdrawal. A doctor was brought into the hospital at the insistence of her friends to prescribe methadone. She was given the methadone for 10 days and began to recover, put on weight, and looked better. Johann Hari reports in his book that her best friend, Millie Duffy, insisted to anyone who would listen that Billie had been effectively murdered by a conspiracy to break her, orchestrated by the narcotics police. Another friend said, "She was exhausted. She just didn't want to go through it anymore." Whatever the true events of Billie Holiday's death, the movies focus on Billie as a rebel who railed against racism by singing the song "Strange Fruit" is a tribute to this brave and strong woman in history. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more videos on the fabulous, fierce, and feisty women in history.